Hey everyone, and thanks for checking out another video. We're up before dawn on a summer morning near Middletown, Ohio. That's HM Junction you're looking at, and that yellow signal means the switch is lined for diverging movement. The calm stillness of the night is about to be broken by the horn blast of an ore train, also known as Iron Maiden. Let's back up a bit though to where this all started. This is the third video in a series I'm putting together on how the iron ore or taconite pellets used in steelmaking get from the Great Lakes to the mills where they're turned into steel. Click here to see the previous video if you missed it. So far we've seen how boats like the Mesabi Miner, shown here, unload the taconite pellets at the CSX TORCO dock in Toledo. The second video showed how the pellets are then loaded into iron ore cars and head to the Cleveland Cliffs facility in Middletown, Ohio. Just a heads up, this video is only going to focus on the iron ore trains arriving, how they enter the mill, and where they're placed once inside. There's a lot to cover with the steel production, so I didn't want to cram it all into one video that would just be me talking for an hour. The iron ore train leaves the yard in Toledo in the dark and arrives in the dark, so we won't get to see the crew prep it and depart the TORCO dock. But here it is heading southbound on the Toledo sub in the middle of the night. A big thank you to YouTuber Orion's Trains for recording this for me. I really do appreciate it. I put a link to his channel in the description for you all to check out. Thanks again. Back to where we started. This is a different train you're about to see. It's already made the diverging move off the Toledo sub main line and is now on the Middletown subdivision. This switch is radio controlled. The crew simply types in a code in the cab of the locomotive to operate it. Mind you, there's a house just out of frame to the left. I can't imagine they ever get used to this wake-up call nearly every day of the week. Up until this switch, it's a 10-mile-an-hour speed limit for the crew. However, once the locomotive passes it, the crew gets an extra 15 miles an hour until they reach close to the Excello yard, where it drops back down to 10 miles an hour. Here we see the tracks carved out of the countryside. That's the Great Miami River it's about to cross. A few minutes later, and the last car of the train passes by. You can see what a difference just a few minutes make. The first day's light was just starting to pop over the horizon. I jumped ahead to catch our train once more, but it wasn't entering the yard. Here we see engines light making their way toward us. That switch leads to the Sun Coke plant. It's where the Middletown facility gets the coke it uses in the steelmaking process. We'll check that out in another video in this series. Here comes our single lead locomotive into Lind Yard. We can see a second locomotive idling ahead of it. The conductor hops down and reverses the switch. We can see several industry leads coming off the left side of the tracks in the distance. They come off the track which leads to what's called the High Line. That's one of the two CSX entrances to the plant. The tracks heading to the right go to the other entrance. We'll watch a train go through each one. But first, let's see what happened to Iron Maiden. I found it sitting on the main next to the park siding. This is the only double track section of the Middletown subdivision. You can see the end of train device still flashing its warning. I also spotted a distributed power unit. Well, I wouldn't end up seeing this train enter the steel plant. As we look around, you can see how far away from the Cliffs facility we are. Let's go check out an ore train that is heading inside. Keep in mind, I shot this footage over more than a year. First up, I spotted 2 locomotives inside the Cliffs property. Those are the empty ore cars in the lower right corner. This crew is going to tie onto this locomotive and then leave the mill to hook onto a waiting ore train. That's the aptly named High Line. It crosses a main road in the Norfolk Southern Dayton district you can just barely see in the upper right corner. Now the crew is coupled to the ore cars and is preparing to make the return trip inside the plant. I believe the man in the orange vest is in training. As the conductors leave, we can see the engineer and the cab. They'll meet each other on the inside. As we see our train begin to pull from a dead stop, it always amazes me the traction steel wheels can grab on steel rails. Not only that, but this train is going up an incline to cross the road in the NS tracks. It heads to the left, which I believe is the AK Steel 800 yard. We can see the conductors waiting for our train. Here's a little history lesson. This facility was started as the American Rolling Mill Company, or ARMCO, in 1899. 90 years later, it entered into a partnership with Kawasaki Steel Corporation. 4 years later, the company rebranded itself as AK Steel for ARMCO and Kawasaki Steel. But in March of 2020, Cleveland Cliffs purchased AK Steel for $1.1 billion in a stock deal. The move brought together the largest iron ore pellet producer in Cleveland Cliffs with AK Steel's flat-rolled steel production. Alright, enough about the past. As our train finishes up, it'll be yarded and then the iron ore turned into pig iron and eventually steel. I went to check on some other things in the facility, and when I caught up with our crew again, they'd already yarded the cars. We're going to watch another train come through and see how it's yarded here. This time, we're just a few days before New Year's in December of 2024. We'll speed things up as our train heads past the Excello office and makes the diverging move into Lind Yard. At the road crossing, we can see the High Line in the background. This is a much more complicated routing, but it is the preferred route for the Iron Maiden. You'll see why it's more of a challenge in just a second. As we follow, those are the NS Dayton District tracks. After getting clearance from NS, our train will make a double diverging move across the main lines. You can see where the train will back into the steel facility here on the right. It must pull every car forward to that switch before it's able to make the reverse move. At the north end of the siding, our train returns to the main line to squeeze all those cars past the switch into the mill. These loaded iron ore trains can have anywhere from 125 to 175 cars on them. Even though they're shorter than traditional hoppers, at 10 miles an hour, you can see the backup this move creates for the local drivers. A few minutes later, and we can see the rear of the train start to clear the NS main lines. There's a CSX conductor in that white SUV waiting for the last cars to pass the switch before he can reverse it. Looks like the engineer still needs to pull about another car length or two to clear the switch points. I could be wrong, but I think that's the same conductor we saw who was in training with our first train. He's now removing the end of train device. Looks like he's got to hold his radio up high so the engineer can hear him because he's so far away. A minute later, and the engineer pulls forward, clearing the tracks, and the conductor reverses the switch, making sure it's locked in place and the points are lined up correctly. Here we see the conductor reversing another switch further inside the facility. After both are set correctly, he lets the engineer know it's safe to push back. The way I understand it, crews working inside the mill must clear everything with Cleveland Cliffs before any operations. Notice how the conductor follows the rear of the train, keeping a close eye on it, and I'm sure communicating with the engineer, letting him know how much room he has. Now we're getting our first look at the operations and how things are set up inside. This is a storage area, mainly for iron ore cars, but we can see loaded NS coke cars on the track to the right and further in the yard. To the left, we see the taconite piles made from the unloaded ore. Eventually, the ore in these cars will end up in one of those piles to the left. Just out of frame is the blast furnace, the first step in the steelmaking process. A wider shot shows more raw materials. This time we see all three needed for steel. You can just barely see the coke piles to the far left. That whitish pile in the back is limestone, and then we see more taconite pellets. As we check in with the rear of the train, we see it's reached the end of the track. It looks like the conductor hops on that last car. I'm guessing he's tightening the handbrake to keep the cars from rolling. He pulls up the release pin and lets the engineer know it's safe to pull apart. A moment later, the cars pull away. I can only imagine how much longer this process would take if that conductor didn't have the SUV to get around from point to point. Looks like the remainder of the cars will be going into that first track. Once the switch is flipped, he paces that last car until it's in position. I'm not sure, but I think this worker's with Cleveland Cliffs. I think he's double checking the handbrakes. If anyone knows for sure, do let me know. A battery change later, and here we see the train making the diverging move into the mill. Notice those tri-light signals guarding the NS main lines. I really do love those signal heads. There we finally see the head of our train. Oh wow, we have a meet with an NS grain train. As the engineer pushes the final cars into the track, this couldn't hold many more cars. Both tracks are pretty much full. Once more, the conductor steps in and gives the engineer the okay to pull forward and uncouple from the train. Now this kind of surprised me. They're actually going to go back out the same way they came in. That means once again getting permission from the NS dispatcher to cross both main lines once more. I figured that an engine's light move would likely go over the High Line and avoid the NS tracks altogether, but what do I know? The Dayton district must have been pretty empty aside from that grain train we just saw. The dispatcher quickly had the switch points reversed for our crew. Now the conductor reverses the yard switch and our engines are ready to return home. This time, they don't cause nearly the backup. Well, our crew is finished for the day. At the end of the video, you can watch as another train is yarded in the storage yard. Before we finish though, I want to show you how the empty ore cars get to the 800 yard. The steel mill has its own fully functioning railroad crews. Here we see one of the many switchers on the property, pulling a string of empties that were recently unloaded. That first pile on the right is coke, but the one further back looks like coal to me based on the color and texture. Does anyone know if I'm right, or are they both coke piles? The storage yard looks pretty full to me. We can also see an NS train to the left. That may be 376 and it's delivering empty coil cars to the nearby Reed yard. We'll see that in a future video. There's the final ore car with some empty coal hoppers behind it. As you probably noticed by how empty the yard is now, this is from a different day. I was a little confused by how things went at first. I'm used to locomotives pushing cuts of cars into the yards, not pulling them in. Let's see how the switcher is going to get out of this one. If you look closely, you can see the crew hop out of the switcher and uncouple from the cars. As we get a better view, I didn't see this while recording, but there's just enough room for that engine to clear a switch that will allow it to leave the yard. I thought the locomotive might be pulling under the NS siding track, but I saw there's no connection. So while I was filming this, I was a little surprised when I saw the crew heading back toward me. Off they go to keep the mill running smoothly. Well, that does it for this video. Like I mentioned, there is another train yarding its ore cars and then leaving the facility. I hope you enjoyed this look at how this yard works and how the iron ore is delivered to the steel mill. In the next videos, we're going to take a look at how the cars are unloaded and then how the iron ore and other ingredients are added to the blast furnace to create the pig iron, and then we'll also see the torpedo cars move to the basic oxygen furnace to create steel. I hope you check that out when they're finished. I know many of you are thinking my steel mill doesn't get iron ore like this. It gets it straight off a boat from the Great Lakes. Well, you're in luck. I've got a few videos in the works where we'll check out the steel mills along Lake Michigan and in Cleveland to see how the iron ore is delivered directly to these plants. Until our next trips, I hope you have a great day.